The future prosperity of this nation rests chiefly in trade. Trade depends, among other things, on the willingness of other nations to lend us money.
And how would you propose to establish international credit?
Our first step would be to incur a national debt. The greater the debt, the greater the credit. And to that end, I have recommended to the President that Congress adopt all the debts incurred by the individual states during the war through a national bank. The idea being that if the states owe Congress money, then other nations will feel more inclined to lend it to us.
If the states are indebted to a central authority, it increases the power of the central government.
You have it exactly. The greater the government's responsibility, the greater its authority.
The moneyed interest in this country is all in the north, so the wealth and power would inevitably be concentrated there in the federal government, to the expense of the south.
If that is the case, it is unavoidable if the Union is to be preserved.
I fear our revolution will have been in vain if a Virginia farmer is to be held in hock to a New York stock jobber, who in turn is in hock to a London banker. The opportunities for avarice and corruption would certainly prove irresistible.
Well, there you have it, as I have heard said. If men were angels, then no government would be necessary.
Well, sadly, that is very well said. But there can be no question. Our nation cannot bind together without powerful central government. But we must also accommodate the needs of our constituent states, both North and South. Now, the power of one must check and balance the other. And to that end, we must dedicate all of our energies and our care.
I would like to welcome Mr. Jefferson home. Mr. Secretary of State.
Here.
Mr. President, gentlemen.
Now that war has been declared between your country and Great Britain, we must remain neutral. Ambassador Genet. The United States is a new and independent nation. It is in our best national interest to keep ourselves apart from affairs to which we have no attachment.
Surely the cause of France is the cause of America, of the world. A threat to France is a threat to America. And we have a treaty, Mr. President. A treaty made when you were at war with England.
I remind the ambassador that our treaty with France was made with King Louis. The king's murder renders that compact no longer binding.
John Adams certainly had the political pedigree to be president. He was a signer of the Declaration, a member of the Continental Congress, minister to France and England, and America's first vice president. And yet, as a leader of men, John Adams' management style was problematic at best.
The Sedition Act made it possible for the federal government to prosecute and jail particularly newspaper editors who criticized the Adams administration. It was mostly a political measure. I mean, these newspapers weren't doing anything which had any effect on the quasi-war with France, but an election was coming up 2 years later, the election of 1800. The Jeffersonian Party was rising, and the Adams administration was trying to crush out political opposition. Somewhere between 10 and 15 newspaper editors actually were put on trial under the Sedition Act, and some of them were thrown in jail. The most famous was Matthew Lyon, a member of Congress from Vermont.
There's some within your party hope to silence the opposition. I assure you they will give it body and solidarity.
Well, I am a party of one, Thomas, as you well know.
Why blacken your fragile reputation? by an assault on the freedoms for which we both fought. Do you intend to ship out the entire French population of the United States? Along with any other luckless soul who happens to voice a contrary opinion?
Well, if that contrary opinion threatens to divide the nation at a time when we must stand united, then yes, I will do just that. I'm entrusted with the nation's safety, Thomas. So these war measures will protect us from insurrection and subversion.
There is no war.
And that is the principle behind these measures. The prevention of war.
Cannot protect the nation by attacking the right of every man to speak freely without fear. You're trampling on the Constitution. The states will have no alternative but to resist these measures, which are an assault on the liberty of their people.
But the people's representatives demanded these acts. Would you have me deaf to the voice of the people?
If your home was being searched without your knowledge, your private conversations monitored and recorded, your every move tracked and stored, would you feel violated? These are the questions many Americans have asked in regard to the Patriot Act, which was passed in 2001 and reinstated in 2006. The Patriot Act allows law enforcement officials to obtain a search warrant anywhere terrorist or domestic terrorist activity is suspected. It also increases the penalties for those who commit terrorist acts. The Act also widens the surveillance powers of the National Security Agency. Our Fourth Amendment specifically states that we can't be searched unless there's probable cause.
Your job will be to command a corps of discovery, to find the best land route to the Pacific. You will map the land's topography and note its plant, animal, and mineral resources. You will bring this government into touch with the Indians of the West and help divert the fur trade.
But, Mr. President, the land belongs to France.
Not for long, I hope.
Bonjour.
Good day.
I'll sell you New Orleans for $15 million.
No deal.
What if I throw in this?
No deal.
This?
No deal.
And this?
Deal.
Some deals are worth making, like the deal in...
The defining moment of Jefferson's presidency was his expansion of executive power to make the Louisiana Purchase, the mega deal of the 19th century. It more than doubled the size of the United States for a mere $15 million.
This is just a bargain. But he doesn't know whether it's constitutional for him to do this. In fact, he rather thinks it isn't.
Had he been true to his principles, he never would have done it.
The problem was American merchants were trading with England and France. That infuriated both sides. Acting impulsively, Jefferson issued the Embargo Act of 1807, stopping all trade with all foreign nations.
What a foolish solution to a problem. Doesn't want to go to war with France, doesn't want to go to war with England. And so instead of making a decision, he says, okay, we're not going to trade with anybody. Well, this is not a statesmanlike decision, and it's disastrous for New England.